My name is Killian Zenger. I've been with Chrome Retreat about 9 months now. I'm recovering from drug addiction, alcohol addiction, abuse, and sexual addiction as well. It kind of all started when I was around 8, 9 years old. I grew up without knowing who my dad was. I have no memories of him at all. It's always just been my mom. And my earliest memories of a stable household are spotty at best. But I specifically remember when we actually moved to Marianna, Florida, after living in Panama City for most of my younger days. We moved in with this guy who didn't quite become my stepdad, but was kind of working that way. He was extremely abusive the whole time. It was mental abuse mostly to start with. 6 months or 7 months into living with this guy, it started becoming more physical, and I just kind of hated the world, everything and everyone. I found that he would leave coolers around in the yard, and they would have beers or mixed drinks or anything like that in them, and I started kind of just sneaking off with whatever I could get my hands on and get away with. Because of the loss of control at home and the abuse I was going through, I started becoming this very angry person at school as well. I got arrested for the first time at 10 for selling alcohol on school grounds and expelled from my school. And this is after repetitive suspensions from fighting with other kids. It never even really made sense that you could do anything. You could breathe in the wrong direction too close to me and that would start a fight because I was just so angry at everything and everyone all the time. We went from happy house to faking it, honestly. I was convinced that as long as the focus of his abuse was toward me and my mom was happy, that she didn't need to know, and that my sister would be safe and everybody else would be fine if it was all just centered on me. So I guess I just kind of tried to shoulder all of that really young, and it led into an alcohol addiction I didn't even realize was an addiction until many years later. It kind of grew into smoking weed, and then I would take Adderall and Vyvanse pills from other kids at school. Started using those regularly. Went from those to painkillers, muscle relaxers, and before long I was doing cocaine, and all of this before I was 13. By the time I was 13, I was no longer allowed in the public school system. I had been completely removed from everything. I'd been in too many fights, too many suspensions, and expelled from a couple of different schools. I was in anger management and therapy, and finally, I got injured bad enough that the question finally came up, and I decided to answer honestly, and I told of the abuse that was going on, and looking back now, I should have said something to begin with, because the second my mom found out, we were out of that place. But at that point, the damage was done. I wasn't mentally in a good place. I had some physical issues that I had been hiding, and now I had a drug and alcohol addiction that I was getting worse and worse into. We moved away from there, and she started dating another guy who wasn't necessarily physically abusive, but he was also mentally abusive, and I had already decided at this point, I don't need a father figure in my life. People suck, and I was gonna do whatever I wanted, so I made no real attempts to bond or accept any kindness really that he was trying to do for us, or for me in particular. I spent a lot of time going to my friends' houses as often as possible, anything to get away from home, which sadly I was kind of abusing their place myself because their household was tight-knit and loving, and they were a Christian household and they went to church regularly and they modeled it very well. And so I would hide what I had going on from them and kind of feed off of the positivity from their household as an escape from my own life. My addiction at this point got worse. It went from when I could find it to I was gonna find it every day. I was now constantly high. I wasn't always drunk, but I was high on something at all times. For the past 17 years, I don't have many sober memories to speak of at all. And all of that time between 13 and 17 is really a blur for the most part. I had gotten to the point of spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars on drugs a day. I would get questions from my mom like, where's all your money going? You know, you started working at 15 and you've been working the whole time. I don't understand why you don't have any money. And I always had some kind of convenient lie or excuse, or I spent it carelessly on this, hiding my addiction. I went ahead and moved in with some friends, and I started this cycle of going between household to household with anyone who was fun around that time for me, I guess. And anyone who wouldn't judge me for the habits I had or would participate in them with me, or both. And still not acknowledging even to myself that I had a problem, or to anyone else that anything was going on. It was slowly ruining my life. I mean, any moment that was sober was miserable. Any moment that I was high was also miserable, but numbed. Partying constantly. And looking back on it, I guess I never really cared that God was real. I never acknowledged it. I had a knowledge of God. I knew He was real. My family had been going to church. I had gone to church. I grew up knowing about it, but I never had that relationship because I didn't care. And really thinking about it, I guess I put God in a box with not only my birth father, but the boyfriends or stepfathers in between that I didn't want or need. So at 25, I guess 26, I got arrested. And I immediately in jail went to the faith-based dorm, and I met so many people who basically were just singing my song, you know? They all, not everyone, but for the most part, there was people understood what I came from, had similar stories, or at least things I could relate to. And I started building a relationship with God, ironically, in jail. And I hear people talk about the jailhouse religion thing, and it didn't really make much sense to me until I got my interview for Chrome. And when I heard kind of what it was about, I went straight to my attorney with it and told them that this is where I needed to go. When I first got to Chrome, I didn't know what to think. It wasn't really what I expected, but it was really welcoming. I didn't know who to talk to at first, but I found friends pretty quickly. It was an interesting setup. I wasn't used to just living around this many people casually like this, especially just a whole bunch of guys. So it was a little nerve-wracking at first and kind of hard to find your way for first week or so. But after you kind of get in and get into a routine, it's a pretty solid place. I found that everyone here, even if they were just putting it at face value, you know, tried to be friendly, welcoming, and was really trying to make a change in their life. And I knew that I made the right choice and I needed to be here. My relationship with God kind of started growing as we go through classes and stuff here. I started learning a lot more and paying better attention to things I never did before. I learned how to pray properly. It's not really so much a ask and receive type thing. It's a conversation with your Heavenly Father is exactly what it is. It's just a conversation. It's a relationship to build upon. And I'm still learning every day how to do that, but it's been a whole different experience than anything else in my life so far. Now that I've been here a while, I've actually decided to stay for another year and join the master's program, but I've reconnected with my mom, who I didn't really talk that much to outside of here. I spent a lot of time looking for excuses, not necessarily not to talk to her, but just always that I was embarrassed of what I had going on. I was always partying or high on drugs and didn't want her to know, so I avoided conversations and spent very little time with my family. I started talking to my uncle a little more again, my grandma. I'm working on trying to build a relationship back with my siblings. Some of them at the moment are estranged, but I know that God has a plan for that too, and I know that when the time is right, that'll be turned around. You know, I didn't really have many goals before being here, except for my next fix and when I was going to get high again. But since being here, I've given a lot of thought to maybe going back to school and learning. Maybe the medical field is what I was interested in for a long time. I might get back into that. And I hope to remain sober after this and continue to reconnect with my loved ones and grow those relationships, as well as be able to tell them of the relationship I've established with God and bring that to my family as well, for those that maybe don't know the real extent of having a relationship with God for themselves as well. So I guess to say to anyone out there watching this, reach out. I mean, I never thought that it could happen for me. I thought that everything was hopeless and I didn't like anybody. I hated the world and was angry for a really long time. And since being here, I have found peace. And what it is, it's not necessarily Chrome that brought that peace on, but that relationship with God really is what you need to reach out and find. And maybe this is the place for you to do it, like we did.